Hello, everybody. Thank you for watching. This is the American Dufus channel, ADC. This show is called News Done Differently. I'm your host, Barry Welsh, and we've got a lot to talk about, so let's get right to it. The latest from Ukraine. This area specifically, and at least 19, I had heard 20 out of 24 of the Ukraine regions or oblasts are having air raid sirens going off. That was about an hour ago. Also word that Russian strategic air bombers were in the air indeed, and that missiles had been launched from outside Ukraine, which would take some time to get there. So all we have at the moment is prayers for the people and places that are going to get hit pretty hard tonight. And just so we know, this is a specific city that's targeted. It's in the Volyn Oblast, and it's called Kovel. It's 37.7 miles, about 40 miles, and 60.79 kilometers from the Polish border. Earlier today, this morning actually, there was an airstrike on a NATO base, and I'm sorry, not a NATO base, but a base in Ukraine that was used for NATO training. Okay, let me get that absolutely correct. It was not a NATO base. It was a base in Ukraine used for NATO training. Sorry about that misspeak. And we'll take a look at some of that damage. 35 people killed, and last number I heard was 153. It was at the Yavor Arviv. Of course it would do this. It was at the Yavor training and peacekeeping facility, and Yavor military training ground, also known as the International Center for Peacekeeping and Security, targeted by 8 Russian missiles this morning, destroying the entire facility. And at that time, the number of casualties was undetermined. Last I heard, 35, unfortunately, 35 people lost their lives, and 153 had been injured. This location is only 10 miles from the Polish border and has been possibly used as a NATO supply transfer station for Ukrainian forces in the east. And again, as of this broadcast, as of 10:08 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, daylight savings time in effect, on the 13th day of March. This is News Done Differently. Thank you for watching. And this is from last, actually, I had this yesterday afternoon, and this is just a different angle of the missile strikes last night that we showed yesterday and last night that struck the compound of the area around the consulate. Conflicting reports upon how many missiles And again, that was from last night, their time, yesterday afternoon, our time. And this gives us a view of the military strength of the two sides before the conflict that has resulted in the situation that the world finds itself in now, a war going on in Ukraine, and Russia reinvading sovereign Ukrainian space. Russia, 850,000 active personnel compared to 200,000 Ukraine. Again, I'm really starting, as I've said before, I'm really starting to think there might be a whole bunch of paper soldiers there that that the oligarchs and Putin have been charging the Russian people to pay these salaries of people that only exist on a registration, and they aren't actual soldiers, and all that money's being funneled out of the military budget into the private pockets of Putin and the oligarchs. Paramilitary forces, 50,000 to 250. Again, I'm thinking these numbers over here might be really, really inflated. You can take a look down there for yourselves at the various different categories. This is okay, wait a minute. I've got this blurb here. The consequences of the Russian invasion on Ukraine may prompt Chinese leaders to think twice about making a forceful takeover of Taiwan, according to Bloomberg. The Kiev ended, the UK, thank you. UK is to donate 500 mobile generators to Ukraine, also sometimes called UK. The Ukrainian government, or the United Kingdom government, will supply generators for critical infrastructure in Ukraine, hospitals, shelters, and water treatment plants. Two things I want to do here near the beginning of this. I want to show this. Whoa. Okay. We can't have the sound. Don't want to get a copyright violation. I want you to watch this. Okay. That's meant to make fun of Putin. Okay. But I think I didn't play it to make fun of him. I didn't play it to make fun of him. I played it because I think it might give us some insight to what's going on with him. It's obvious that it seems like a lot of people don't like Putin, or at least don't want to touch him or shake his hand, including Kim Jong-il of North Korea. So there might be more truth than some of you may have thought, as far as just what the psyche is of Putin. And I didn't play that, did I? Okay. Hang on just a second here and let me go to because I just deleted it from the file. I'll go back to it. It was a picture of it was a video of several world leaders not shaking hands with Putin. Again, I've got new software and are relatively new. Let me come back here. And Russia is indeed getting basically blacked out as far as the internet, as far as what's going on with the outside world getting into Russia and what is coming out of Russia. The lines of communication are shrinking rapidly. And the same thing is true for the cities in Ukraine. Many of the cities in Ukraine, the communications are getting worse, and there's a lot of, and justifiably so, there's a lot of self-editing going on in that people just aren't communicating enough, or not enough. People just aren't communicating as much, and only for really necessary measures, because there's a lot of, electronic warfare going on. Both sides stealing phone conversations and geolocating, something that we've been very very cautious about playing anything that's going to put anyone at risk. U.S. and Chinese officials to meet in Rome tomorrow to discuss the situation in Ukraine. And in financial news, Russian government is broke, needs money ASAP. They have a huge stockpile of gold, so they thought they'd be okay, at least for a while. However, no one is willing to buy Russian gold right now, and they've been discounting it at 20%, and still barely, if any, buyers. And if you're out there thinking, hey, I need to figure out how to buy some Russian gold, you will become a wanted felon by the United States if you're in this country trying to do it. And chances are, if you're watching this, whatever country you're in will probably be under the same sanctions. So don't try to make a quick buck. I found this a good juxtaposition to how things are on the ground in Ukraine, in that at first you could almost feel like you were in a World War II movie, or a Korean War movie, or just a battlefield of old, not all the way back to, Napoleon or Washington or even the Civil War, but and then you see the modern technology. You go from incredibly dangerous reconnaissance, getting that close, which again is, it's World War II kind of stuff. And you go from that to the technology of watching the missile. You see the missile being launched, and instead of watching it, you watch it on the screen. And if you want to know the definition of precision guided missiles or precision guided armaments, I should say, we just witnessed it there. Russia's finance minister today revealed that due to sanctions, Moscow has lost access to 300 billion of Russia's 640 billion they had in reserve. As a result, debts in countries unfriendly to Russia will be paid in ruble equivalents. So it's about 150 rubles. I don't know the exact amount. The last time I looked at the market, I think it was like 150 rubles for $1. It may be down to 120 or something now, which basically means they're worth less than a penny because there's 100 pennies in a dollar and 120 rubles. The ruble is going to be less than a penny. So again, a lot of us in America think that, well, we're sitting okay, we're all right financially. I'm not one of them, but a lot of us think that. And if something happens to our markets, it would be a disaster. And something is happening to their market and to their currency. We can imagine what it's like here, what it would be like here. Well, it's quickly becoming even worse over there because we've had it really, really good, and God willing and God have mercy on America, we'll continue to soldier forward. But things can collapse globally, not only militarily, but also monetarily. Intelligence update, and this came in 4 hours ago. I've been talking about, well, I hadn't the past 2 episodes, but I had been talking about the Russian Navy in the Black Sea, and they had gone back to port, so that's why I hadn't talked about them the last 2 days. Russian naval forces have established a distant blockade of Ukraine's Black Sea coast, effectively isolating Ukraine from international maritime trade. Russian naval forces are also continuing to conduct missile strikes against targets throughout Ukraine, and Russia has already conducted one amphibious landing in the Sea of Azov that was around Mariupol, and could look to conduct further such operations in the coming weeks. Pardon me. If this is indeed the prelude to World War III, the first American victim that we know of from this war happened earlier this afternoon. He was a fellow journalist, not someone I knew or honestly was even aware of, but a journalist nonetheless, and he became a video journalist. And his name was Brett Renaud, and he was killed today. And this man was also shot, and
you don't know what happened to him.
He was shot. They were both in the same car, and oh, come on.
Yes. What happened to you?
We crossed one of the.
Tell me, please, what is your name?
Juan.
Where are you from?
The U.S.
Yes. What happened to you?
We crossed one of the first bridge in Restream. We were going to film other refugees leaving, and we got into a car. Somebody offered to take us to the other bridge, and we crossed a checkpoint, and they started shooting at us. So the driver turned around, and they kept shooting. It's 2 of us. My friend is Brett Renaud, and he's been shot and left behind.
And how is he?
I don't know.
You don't know. You don't know what happened to him.
He was. I saw him being shot in the neck, and we got split, and I got pulled into the
And who brought you here?
an ambulance. I don't know.
Horrific. Unfortunately, the first casualty, first death of an American, the first wounding of an American, and I'm hoping against hope that we don't have many more. I found this touching and wanted to share it. I'm one of 2 million people left in Kyiv, once a busy, vibrant city of more than 4 million. Now it is almost empty. Ravens have become so loud, people are silent, sad, and polite. It's the 18th day of Russia's war against Ukraine, and I can't digest how the world let this happen. You probably heard about this already. It happened again 6 hours ago. United States and China, and I'm going to talk about this in just a couple of seconds here. United States and China are meeting in Rome to discuss Ukraine, and the United States is claiming through intelligence that Russia has reached out and asked China for military help. And let's just say that Russia's asking for more than just like spare parts and stuff. Okay, they want people. All right. That tells me again that the Russian army, the whole Russian army, is possibly a paper tiger. That and we've been hearing about the breakdowns, and that some of the main just hadn't been done. That the breakdowns were because of seals and bearings, and a lot of the equipment, a lot of the ammo, especially for the AK-47s that have been taken, have been in metal containers, so they are rusted. So have we, the United States, been scared of nothing all this time? No, because they still have nuclear warheads, and if you watched last night, you know that they have made it clear that they're not ever taking that off the table. After Russian forces kidnapped the mayor of Melitopol in southern Ukraine, local lawmaker Galina Chinchenko says a committee of the people's chosen ones will be in charge, and urges locals to adjust to the new reality, and says protests are extremists, which is a Russian buzzword. So this is the city where we showed the mayor being taken, that had a plastic bag over his head, a lot like we've seen from ISIS and other Middle Eastern organizations when they were extracting people. And the mayor's been tortured. Second mayor and possibly a third mayor have been abducted. And basically what they're doing, they're trying to insert puppet governments into these areas. And I'll get to why in a minute, and I've got to get to her in a minute. Barack Obama tested positive for COVID. He's vaccinated and boosted and just has a scratchy throat. And Michelle's fine, but he wanted to remind everybody to get vaccinated if you haven't already, even as cases go down. Canadian volunteers on their way to Ukraine. Again, about 6,000 people have volunteered to go fight in Ukraine from the United States. However, only about 100 have actually been, selected. And yes, okay. Again, I'm going to stick around till the end of this because I'm going to kind of connect the dots globally on some things. So if you're interested, stick around to the end of this. South Korea and the U.S. have detected signs that North Korea might launch a new intercontinental ballistic missile as early as this week. We've been hearing about this for a few days now, and I expected at any time. And I said last night, I'm hoping it is heading towards the Sea of Japan and not towards South Korea. Okay. Just so you know, earlier today, the Russian oligarch Abramovich landed in Tel Aviv in Israel. Why does that matter? Well, we'll get to that in just a minute. Russian missiles hit a large Ukrainian base. That's the one we were talking about. These are some of the wounded being taken out. But I'm going to do an episode first thing tomorrow, and we'll talk about Tucker and Trump and Putin. This we have to draw attention to. Israel informs the U.S. defense chiefs that Jerusalem tensions could escalate into Israeli-Pakistani war. Shin Bet Director Rohan Bar relays warning during visit to Washington. All right. Keep all this stuff in mind. North Korean missile test. Israel. This guy, President Zelensky today visited injured in the hospital. I don't know. He's almost like something out of a movie, because 21st century leaders aren't supposed to do these kind of things. So it's so foreign. Now this, again, we don't jeopardize any geolocating possibilities. And this is one of the first. This is one of the first people that contact with when this all started, and if you go back, we have featured his stories, and this is how he started his day.
Sorry, I don't have so much time to make new tweets. I wrote kind of a diary of last 2 weeks in Twitter, but for real there was not so much time to do that. Also, connection is really poor, and now I don't know when next time I can show up, but whatever, I hope to come back to you, because 40,000 people is serious. Anyway, have a nice day. day. Greetings from Ukraine. Everything fine with us. I'm waiting for you here for the biggest international party after our win. Bye.
Slava Ukraine. We do hope indeed that we continue to hear from him. The Russian negotiating team has stated that there has been significant developments in talks between the Ukraine and Russian governments, and that they expect a ceasefire to be signed by the two countries in the next 2 or 3 days. I don't know how much you've heard about this. Again, it comes from the Russian side. The Russians are leaking that this is what's going to happen. And yet I told you as the night started, as our episode started, that 19, possibly 20 of the 24 regions in Ukraine were under air raid warning alerts. So my problem with, sorry, too far back. My problem with there we go. My problem with this is if Russia was serious about a ceasefire, they would, if they were legitimate, they would go ahead and do it. They wouldn't have to wait 2 or 3 days. It doesn't take 2 or 3 days now to notify your troops you're going to have a ceasefire. That's number one. Number two is generally when they've done this before, all they've done is reposition troops and fired on corridors. And the third possibility is that they ask for a ceasefire, and if a ceasefire is signed, if it's a signed ceasefire, then they basically go, okay, wherever the Russian troops are now, that's now Russian territory. That's a big concern. Like, everything's just frozen. We sign a ceasefire and everything just ceases where it's at. Then you got a whole bunch of people potentially trapped that are starving already, and they're going to continue to starve. And I'm just not putting a lot of faith in a good outcome if there is indeed a ceasefire. But that is what has been leaked by the Russian negotiating team, the Russian team that was they've been meeting by video, by the way. They've been meeting by video conference. Again, I buzzed right past this. I talked about the Canadians going, and I said only 100 Americans. It's been more now, but at that time, only 100 Americans had been approved. And according to the State Department, they don't want you to go to Ukraine as a foreign fighter. And it says, well, okay, I'm not going to be able to get to the article. Here we go. Got a video. Again, this all comes from the Associated Press. I reported on it last night and the night before, but sometimes sometimes it's reassuring for people to see that I don't want to. Okay, it's reassuring for people to see that it's backed up in a day or two by mainstream. Many of the Wagner Group, the message appeals to those with criminal records, debts, banned from mercenary groups, or without an external passport. So many of the Wagner Group that we've been talking about that are being sent in and trying to penetrate Kyiv, it doesn't appear that they're top of the line people either. So we're going to keep monitoring all this as it goes along, of course, and I want to tie everything together here in just a couple of minutes. I've got again, we'll get to Tucker and Trump tomorrow morning. So I had the blast, the missile strikes on Erbil earlier, Erbil earlier yesterday afternoon, and I don't think CNN had it until this morning. And the State Department is really trying to brush this under the ground, under the carpet, if you will. And nothing to see here. Move along. And then the advisor to Iran's nuclear negotiating team, again, they've been meeting, and the meeting was progressing nicely up until Russia reinvaded Ukraine. Advisors to Iran's nuclear negotiating team in Vienna, Mohammad Marandai, who is also the son of the Iranian supreme leader, his personal physician. This guy's his son. He gloats after tonight's attack on Erbil near the unoccupied new U.S. consulate that quote, "This is just the beginning." And here's his actual, this was in Erbil last night. "This is just the beginning." So the State Department can brush it under the rug for a while, possibly, but if indeed, and we'll show this tomorrow too, if I don't have a new one from him, incredible speech. And this guy is this guy, and he doesn't care. He's made it really clear. Show what I'm doing to these MFers. I'm not sure. This is unconfirmed, but I also had the first shots of unconfirmed thermobaric weapons being used, and somebody's watching, or somebody's copying. I think this might be the first example of phosphorus bombs, phosphorus weapons being utilized over rather remote villages that you wouldn't think would normally have access to the internet, possibly. But again, this is in the Donbass region, and those are indeed outlawed if that's what this is a picture of. And we talked about this. I don't know how long it'll last, but at the moment, both Republicans and Democrats are united, at least as far as the people, not the politicians. A lot of the Republican politicians are in the Trump Putanon category of the Trump, the Putin, and the QAnon. But a lot of the Republican citizenry is really down on Russia and really positive on Ukraine. And again, I don't know how long this will last, but I think it's a positive sign that if push comes to shove, there are going to be more people that are pro-democracy than pro-dictatorship. I thought about starting with this, but I'm going to play it right before we talk big picture. And okay, I've got some time. This is Vlada, and I promised Vlada that I would introduce this video to as many people as I could in America. Normally, I set my settings so that you can't cut out just a clip, but I'm going to leave this one open for a while so that those of you that know what you're doing, you can cut out the clip of what I'm about to show you. And if you don't share my whole videos on a normal basis, at least consider sharing this, because this is something that needs to be heard all across the world.
Hello, my name is Vlada, and before the 24th of February, I was a climate activist from the Fridays for Future Russia. Now I left my climate activism to concentrate on the anti-war. Now I'm going to distribute anti-war leaflets, and even by this action, I have some risks to be detained by the Russian police. Unfortunately, the anti-war movement in Russia is being oppressed by Putin's autocratic regime. People are illegally detained at anti-war rallies, then fined or sent to a temporary detention center. In police departments, people are beaten, mentally pressured, and some are subjected to physical and sexual torture. We are forbidden to say the word war. Russia's actions can only be called as
Less than a minute. And I was told if I would delete that, it wouldn't get refreshed as much. But I want to get her voice out here.
On the 24th of February, I was a climate activist.
Let's do this from the jump again. So if anybody does if anybody does actually clip it, we can get a good clip in here.
Hello, my name is Ada, and before the 24th of February, I was a climate activist from the Fridays for Future Russia. Now I left my climate activism to concentrate on the anti-war action. Now I'm going to distribute anti-war leaflets, and even by this action, I have some risks to be detained by the Russian police. Unfortunately, the anti-war movement in Russia is being oppressed by Putin's autocratic regime. People are illegally detained at anti-war rallies, then fined or sent to a temporary detention center. In police departments, people are beaten, mentally pressured, and some are subjected to physical and sexual torture. We are forbidden to say the word war. Russia's actions can only be called a special operation. For the phrase "no to war," you can get up to 15 years in prison. I'm very glad that I was not subjected to repressions, but I still fear for my friends in Russia who are risking everything they have to fight the horror that Putin has made in Ukraine. And I'm afraid for my friends in Ukraine, for whom every exit from the bomb shelter can be fatal. In such situations, Russians usually say that this war is Putin's fault, not ordinary people's. I believe that this war is really not my fault, but it is still my responsibility. Therefore, I appeal to everyone who hears me now. Journalists, give a voice to the victims of tortures in Russian police departments. Give a voice to everyone who suffered from this regime. And first of all, to the Ukrainians who simply wanted to live in peace on their own lands. Politicians and activists in Europe, remember that your governments are still buying fossil fuels from Russia. Now it's not oil that flows through your pipes, but the blood of Ukraine.
And I'll be featuring that again tomorrow. I want to go from that to this. This is audio only.
Начинал эту аннексию Крыма, Луганска, как бы сказать, Крыма, Луганска, Донецка. Просто начал забрать.
What we're listening to is another Russian. Unlike Vlada, she speaks English very well. This particular Russian has been able to get around the internet through Belarus and came on to one of the places I pay attention to, and he was through a translator. He is asking, why is Ukraine doing all this? And I'll pause from time to time, but the comparison and contrast from what we just saw from the young woman that says, you know, it's not my fault, but, you know, it's all of Russia's fault, to this conversation. And I don't play the whole conversation for you. There is a Westerner, I will say, that he gets impatient.
Питер по-английски говорит, да, он не знает русский язык. Я уверен, Питер хорошо знает русский язык и понимает, где. Я в Крыму побыл. Я в Крыму общался с людьми, да, и ну, очень в разных там, да, и украинским народом общался, и российским народом общался. Не знаю, надо посмотреть, надо слушать народа, что народ говорит. Я в Украине тоже был не раз, и в Киеве был. Ну, я не считаю этот как бы повод, чтобы украинцы хотели быть Запада, и Путин это не устраивал.
Я могу переводить сейчас, пожалуйста?
Да, пожалуйста, пожалуйста. Извиняюсь, я, может, да, длинную речь делаю. Просто я английский слабый, не готов объяснить свои мысли.
So yes, he's saying, of course, I understand Peter doesn't speak Russian and he doesn't understand. Well, I have been in Crimea, in Ukraine. I have spoken to many people, Ukrainian, Tatars, all of the nationalities living there. And you have to listen to the voice of the locals, and you have to listen to the people of those places, what they are saying, which does not sound a very interesting. No, it does sound interesting to myself, but he said that his English is very weak, so he doesn't want to speak in it. But he said, you guys have to listen to the voice of the local people over there as well, not just what West are saying.
Yeah, so I've been listening to the reports out of Donbass about the rapes of women and it being utterly not prosecuted by the local Russian-backed paramilitaries. I've been listening to Crimean Tatars talking about how they've been jailed for trying to speak out about the repression that Russia has been making. So I have been listening to local voices, but not all of them are pro-Moscow.
Я буду переводить для тебя. Питер тоже сказал, что он говорил с тартарами, и говорил с украинцами, и говорил с людьми из Донецка, Луганска, и он также слышал, что там было изнасилований и вообще много этих криминальностей, да, и эти промосковские группировки, я бы сказал бы, да, они ничего об этом не делают. Почему?
Знаете, я думаю, в мире каждый нужен, и каждый будет нуждаться перед ним.
Okay. Basically, the Russian is trying to figure out, because all he's been told is, Ukraine is to blame for all this. And he comes on and asks, and, why is Ukraine doing this? And the Westerner, as you heard, had lost his patience with him and it was continuing to, and the conversation was about to come to a close with that last translation. And I know that can be a little tedious for those of us that don't speak Ukrainian or Russian, and I don't. But nonetheless, the translation is worth the conversation. And he left, the Russian left, still convinced that Russia had not done anything wrong, and that all of us that were in there from all these different countries had all come together just to peddle the big lie, to peddle a big lie. And let's not forget, let's take a look at our Propaganda 101. If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. Accuse the other side of that which you are guilty. Propaganda works best when those who are being manipulated are confident that they are acting on their own free will. And most of the people that are being manipulated are incredibly confident. They are incredibly outspoken, and they have no doubt that they made these decisions on their own. And it is vitally important for the state to repress dissent, for the truth is the mortal enemy of the lie, and thus the greatest enemy of the state. Before I get to the big global picture, I've got to narrow the focus down for me momentarily here, just for a few minutes, and remind everyone that 2 years ago today in Louisville, Kentucky, a young black woman named Breonna Taylor was murdered. yet another peaceful march through the streets of Louisville, so reminiscent of night after night after night. 2 years ago, year and a half ago, we spent focused on the injustices that were happening to the people that were protesting. Again, thank you for watching. If you're still with us, I'm going to be wrapping things up here, but I want to kind of touch base on a few different things. First of all, North Korea. We've said, don't be surprised if there's a missile launch in the next, let's say, 48 to 72 hours. A missile test. I hope it's not a missile launch. They've been saying that they've been testing medium range missiles in order to launch a satellite to watch over, to keep an eye on America. And then all of a sudden they say, we've got a big enough intercontinental ballistic missile to shoot at America. We have to be aware of that, of the possibility that little crazy sucker is going to decide to try to bring the rest of the world down to his level. Again, the U.S. and China are meeting tomorrow, and Russia has reached out to China for help. So a lot of dots. Before I forget, I mentioned I was reading the official defense report from Ukraine Defense Department, and that they expected possible amphibious operations from the Russian Navy, possibly in Odessa. You may hear other places call them Russian Marines are doing this, but Russia really doesn't have Marines like the United States Marines, who take beaches and that's what they're trained for. The Russians call theirs mariners, not Marines. So if you hear somebody say Marines, it gives you the idea that it's the same type of unit or forces that we would deploy from the United States, and that's not going to be the case. These are amphibious warriors, mariners. They are used to having major ground support already before they kind of come in to shore up the last remaining areas, if you will. They're not like our Marines, the first in no matter what. And one of our Marines is going to take out 46 of their people. That's not what a Russian mariner is. Okay, so I personally don't think it's going to be as easy as Russia might think. They were successful in Mariupol with amphibious landing, but the place has been decimated. Odessa, as of this broadcast, has not been touched yet and is very fortified. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Okay. Yes. Precision guided missiles, smart bombs. We watched almost to the point where we became unconditioned or became conditioned rather to not realizing that innocent lives were being, or not innocent lives, but lives were being taken as we watched, almost as if from a video game, the smart bombs of the United States in the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. And Russia does have those. Again, I think there's been so much money taken away from the Russian military that they may not have as many of anything as we think. I don't think that they have anywhere close to 850,000 troops, or they wouldn't be trying to get troops from China. I think they're reeling, and I don't know if Putin realizes that. I don't know if anybody's actually told him that. Again, we started out this episode, and I don't know what's happened since we've been on, but started out this episode with Russian bombers, strategic bombers in the sky, and potential missile strikes coming. And the reason I'm saying I don't know if they have how many precision missiles they actually have. They only use the precision missiles on military assets. On the civilian bombing, they drop just gravity bombs that just hit wherever they hit, and much like the carpet bombing of World War II and Vietnam that the United States did, just drop as many bombs as you can over as big as areas you can. That may be what is happening tonight in certain cities, maybe all the big cities around Ukraine. I pray it isn't, but I think that might be what is going on. There's expected to be at the moment about 1,500 military casualties from Ukraine. That might have gone up since today, and there's anticipated to be 5 to 7 times that number of civilians, many of them in mass graves and buried under duress out of necessity. And don't think that this is just this is something that if it's allowed here is going to go away. Now, I mentioned that the Z is the new swastika, and I mentioned it, I guess, probably a week or so ago, and I didn't mention it just to be saying something or to try to be controversial or whatever. I said it because it's true, and the Z, this particular Z thing has been going on for a long time within certain segments of Russia. All right, just because it's new to us, and we think, well, we didn't know about it, so it can't be. It's been going on for a long time over there, not only in Russia, but in the Baltic states that still speak Russian. For the some of the former Soviet Union areas do have pro-Russian segments in them, just as the Donbass has pro-Russian segments in it, just not a majority. And they couldn't win an election, so they took it by military force. But unless it's stopped now, the Z will be the new swastika. And I'm going to go ahead and go on. The Z will be the new swastika if this goes on. And here's a look at the Nazi flag and the American flag and the American flag and the Nazi flag and Nazi banners and the American flag. And Nearly 1,000 uniformed men wearing swastika armbands and carrying Nazi banners parade past a reviewing stand in New Jersey on July 18th, 1937, just as Hitler was rampaging across Europe. Here's German-American Bund camp youth. They were called the Bund, B-U-N-D. Members of the German-American Bund form a guard of honor. So, is this something to worry about? You wouldn't think so, but it could be something to really be concerned about. Just depends how many there are. Just depends how many there are. Before the United States entered World War II, American Nazis gathered at Madison Square Garden for a mass rally for true Americanism. The propaganda, remember. And I want you to look at this. This is the German-American Bund, and this is their leader, Fritz Kuhn. All right. Now, let's take a look at take a look at this. This is from January 21st of this year. No, they're not Nazi flags, but it's something we have to be aware of. We have to think about here. Again, that's from Ford Fisher, News to Share. Ford Fisher, been on the show before, and video journalist. I'm going to come back to couple other pictures here, actually. Again, this is in America during World War II, or the lead up to World War II, and can you possibly see Trump influences coming from having seen these kind of things, the Trumpisms? It's a pro-American rally, even though it's a Nazi fascist rally, and that's the last thing America's about. Remember the propaganda, the big lie. It's pro-American for true Americanism. Okay. Now, if you are, if you're a fascist white supremacist, then in your mind, this is pro-American and this is true Americanism, but it's not what American democracy is truly about. And there's really not an argument for that. Just so you know, there were a crap ton full of people outside protesting it as well. And one guy even got onto the stage and was shouting obscenities about Hitler, and the quote unquote stormtroopers got him off the stage. We've talked about we've talked about the missile firings into the base at or into the compound at the U.S. consulate in Erbil, the Kurdish part of northern Iraq, and how first of all we found out that this is just the beginning, was what one highly placed Iranian official said. There was also a report from the Iranian Guard. I can never remember this. It's not the Royal Guard, but the I'll remember it. Republican Guard. The Iranian Republican Guard said that it was for the two Iranians killed in a missile strike by Israel, and then we get this: a woman stabs her date in a Las Vegas area hotel room in retaliation for a U.S. drone strike that killed an Iranian leader. It's getting late and it's been a long day. Soleimani, I believe. A woman is accused of stabbing her date she met online. Meeting dates online is always a bit of risk involved. But she stabbed him in retaliation for the 2020 death of the Iranian leader, Qasem Soleimani, back in 2020, who was killed in an American drone strike. Nico Ubin, 21, faces charges of attempted murder, battery with a deadly weapon, and burglary. She and the victim met online on the dating website Plenty of Fish. Henderson police wrote in an arrest report. The duo then agreed to meet at Sunshine Station March 5th, renting a room together. While in the room, the pair began engaging in some sexual activity, and she put a blindfold on the victim, and she turned the lights off, and several minutes later, the victim felt a pain in the side of the neck. She reportedly stabbed the victim in the neck for revenge against U.S. troops for the killing of Qasem Soleimani in 2021. After the stabbing, the victim pushed her off of him, ran out of the room to call 911. She ran out of the room also, telling a hotel employee that she had just stabbed a man. When talking to police, she told an investigator she wanted revenge. She said she had listened to the song Gravedigger, which gave her the motivation to carry out her revenge. A lot of things to think about on that one. So, yeah. And I want to go back. We're getting a little long here, but again, from Ford Fisher, news to share. Yet another reminder that, and this is going to kind of lead us into the wrap up. I promise you I'm going to wrap it up after this, and the wrap up will probably take about 15 minutes, maybe, hopefully not that long. Okay. Just a reminder that Ukraine is not the only place that fighting is going on and has been going on. And we mentioned earlier, Israel has told the U.S. that Israel could launch a full-scale war against Palestine within the coming month. Israeli forces, you see, but just a reminder that it's not a world war at the moment. For it to be a world war, there'll have to be conflicts going on in major places around the world. Potential for a world war is definitely here, with so many points of potential conflict. And to wrap up, first of all, let me get a map up. All right. Ukraine, Russia, big Russia, China, Kazakhstan, Mongolia, India, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran, little tiny Israel, Turkey, Greece, Italy, France, Germany, Poland, United Kingdom, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Ukraine. First of all, a lot of times you'll hear lumped all together NATO, Ukraine, or NATO, United States, and EU. They are not all the same. Okay, they're not all the same. NATO is an alliance of Canada, United States, the North Atlantic countries, NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and it is a defensive alliance. Okay, EU is an economic and political unification of some parts of a lot of Europe. The United States is its own separate entity with its own separate interests. NATO has its own separate interests from sometimes the United States, and the EU may have their own separate interests from both NATO and the United States. So you can't really lump them all together, and that happens a lot. And I just wanted to point out, the differences in case there's any question. Globally, the idea of World War III, you have to ask, who's fighting who? Back when we were covering so much of the social injustices and the fight for equality and freedom and justice in this country, a lot of times, people were shouting, let's just get it over with and start the war. And it's, who's fighting who? You always want to know that before you really start a war. Who's fighting who? We have a pretty good idea that along with Russia, we're going to get Belarus. Okay. Outside of that, we know most of NATO, United States, and Canada. Now, just because, again, they're separate entities, just because, say something happens and NATO goes to war, NATO invokes war, that does not necessarily mean the United States is part of that war, because Poland, I don't want that removed here, get that off of there. All right, Poland is going to have the most to lose if something were to happen, and we are heavily defending Poland, so there's no doubt Poland's going in. Our troops may not go in first. It may not be, okay, this happened, U.S. come in and knock them down. Well, there are many of us that think that may be the way it should happen. That's not how it's probably going to happen. Other troops from other countries are going to join the fray before the United States actually does. That's my estimation. That's my analysis. And I bring this all up because we've talked through this episode that Russia has already struck so close to the Polish border, within 50 miles. And with a precision bomb, a miss of 50 miles, that's horrible. With a dumb bomb, it's a long way to miss by, but it's a lot easier to claim accidental. So these are just things to think about. We know pretty much who might get involved where. All right. We know, again, I'm using my hands like you can see me. We know NATO. We know NATO's going to come in on the side of Ukraine. Turkey, Turkey's part of NATO. You would think they would come in on the side of Ukraine. They've been sending drones, fighter drones to Ukraine. Then we get down into Syria, Lebanon, Israel, Jordan, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, and the United States and the United Arab Emirates. The oil, okay, the oil. We think probably Iran would come in on the side of Russia. More than likely, if push comes to shove, because Iran basically, with Azerbaijan and Georgia, Iran all but shares a border with Iran, and I'm not degrading these two countries. I'm just saying, if Russia is the might it says it is, and it decides it wants to flex its strength, it would be nothing to destroy these two countries and bring them back into the Russian fold, which they've tried to do with Georgia. The real countries, because I got to get this wrapped up. The question marks. The question marks start with India. India at the moment is trying to bridge both sides, trying to stay neutral. They actually India actually initiated the countries of neutrality back after World War II, that they didn't want to fight anybody anymore. India also accidentally shot a missile into Pakistan. India will do what probably the opposite of China does. At the moment, India is staying independent, staying neutral. They will probably do the opposite of what China does. If China comes in on the side of Russia, India will probably move closer to the side of the United States. The other nation of consequence, these all start with an I, oddly enough, but the next major country of consequence is the nation of Israel. We honestly do not know what Israel is going to do. Israel has said they could potentially start a war with Pakistan, which most of the Arab neighbors would probably not be pleased with, and which Iran would be involved in proxy with. And we reported last night that intelligence said Israel would probably be targeting military assets within Iran shortly, but not nuclear facilities. And then we got China. China's kind of playing in the middle, and China's, we really don't understand Russia. We don't, United States can be arrogant at times. Come on, let's be honest here. It's just us. United States can be arrogant at times, and we really don't understand Russia, and we understand China many, 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 many times less than we understand Russia. United States, our government is usually based on a 1 or 2 or 5 year plan, maybe a 10-year plan. China, they think in 500-year plans. Okay, so we won't know what China does until China does it. Okay, and that's going to be a big decider in this. I'm going to stop for now because I'm coming up on an hour and a half, and I've got a bunch more, so I'll be back in the morning at some point, sometime between probably 10 and 2. So look for a live then. And I thank you all for watching. This has been News Done Differently. I'm your host, Barry Welsh. We're kind of blowing through things and a little bit all over the place and back and forth, but that's the way the world is now. So thank you for watching. I love you all. Blessings. Namaste. Salam. Shalom. And we will be back. We will be back tomorrow night and tomorrow afternoon. Again, thank you for watching. It's the American Dufus Show. Don't be a doofus. If you'd like to help support the show, it's always needed. $ American Dufus, all one word, AMERICANDUFUS at the Cashapp. If you want to email American Dufus, again, all one word, at gmail.com. It is a dark world. Do try to be a light. My name's Barry Welsh. This has been News Done Differently. Thank you for